it's time to level up the discourse a bit. A metaphorical raising of the eyebrows about what still annoys or puzzles this particular foreigner living in Japan in 2022. I thought this video might be about dispelling some of the common misconceptions about Japan, the culture, the people, the society, and all the rest of it. However, it occurred to me, having lived here for a fair few years now, I was no longer sure what the most common misconceptions about Japan still are in 2022. So I googled it and it gave me a couple of tired old classics like Japanese people eat sushi all the time and Japan is technologically advanced. Anyway, ultimately I felt like we're just going to keep going round and round in circles with that kind of stuff. No, it's time to level up the discourse a bit. So instead, what this video has turned into is a metaphorical raising of the eyebrows about what still annoys or puzzles this particular foreigner living in Japan in 2022. Perhaps this could be a call for Japan to engage in a bit of introspection or reflection on what's going on in Japan now that the dust of the pandemic is beginning to settle. Albeit this is a call from one of the voices of a people which Japan cares least about: foreigners. Okay, so there's a misconception for you. Or is it? Just to be clear, these confusing quirks or peccadillos are things that I encounter during my everyday life here in Japan. Perhaps you've got some of your own that you'd like to share. If so, join the community, leave them in the comments below, like this video, and subscribe to the channel. Now let's get into this. Why, apparently, are the vast majority of Japanese people still wearing face masks outside? I spend much of my outdoor time in Japan around my home in the Kanto suburbs or in downtown Tokyo where I work. Looking around, I'd say 90% of the people I see wearing on the streets are still wearing their face masks. Now, the obvious answer as to why this might be is because the coronavirus hasn't gone anywhere yet, has it? Or unless I've missed an important announcement at some point. But speaking of announcements, it was in late May this year that the Japanese government changed its stance on advice regarding wearing face masks. The official word at that time, and I'm just reading from a computer here, you do not need to wear a mask outdoors when you're approximately 2 meters apart from others, or when you are not talking at a distance of less than 2 meters. In fact, the word from the people upstairs at that time was that face masks were not required indoors either, provided people were keeping an appropriate distance and were not talking to one another. We've since seen a poster aimed at overseas arrivals to Japan emblazoned with the words, "Outdoors, no need for masks." Now, I come from the UK, a country where the vast majority of people would have likely ditched their face masks at the first sign that it was okay to do so, pretty much like they might ditch their clothes at the first sign of a sunny day. And yet, here we are in early November in Japan, and it appears, to me at least, that the vast majority of people are still wearing their masks outside. Around the same time as the Japanese government's change of stance in May this year, an article in The Guardian included a quote from Toshio Nakagawa, president of the Japan Medical Association, which might have made for bleak reading for anyone hoping that Japan will be losing the masks anytime soon. "I believe that the day people can stop wearing masks will never come in Japan so long as the country continues seeing coronavirus cases," quotes the article. Kind of echoing that sentiment then, my Japanese partner has been telling me for quite a long time now that the Japanese will never become comfortable not wearing masks until the coronavirus is something that can be treated with like a pill or some other kind of over-the-counter medication. The government's message about face masks then isn't getting across, according to some. Step forward then, Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida, who in a policy speech at the Diet on October 3rd, said that it is in principle unnecessary to wear face masks outdoors. Some news reports have suggested that people inside the government wanted to take this message further and remove any caveats about keeping distance and not talking or refraining from talking. They were held back from doing so apparently though by health experts who were worried that a sudden unmasking in Japan would lead to a spike in cases of influenza. None of this though seems to address the culture in Japan of the group taking priority over the individual, or at least individual expression. And this is perhaps what I can personally find a little bit frustrating about the mask situation in Japan, as well as in regards to other aspects of life in this country, as a foreigner anyway. Are people still wearing masks here to prevent the virus? Or are they doing it simply because they're afraid or they don't have the confidence to be the first person in their particular group to take off their mask? Despite people often gushing about how the Japanese people wear face masks out of consideration for others, some research suggests otherwise. Back in the summer of 2020, news reports talked of a team of researchers led by Kazuya Nakayachi, a professor at Doshisha University. The team surveyed 1,000 people about wearing masks and found that the top reason for wearing masks was because everyone else was doing so. Wearing masks is recommended to stop the virus from spreading to others, but our research suggests wearers rarely use masks for that purpose. Most of them simply want to don masks just because others do, Nakayachi said, according to reports. You take the rough with the smooth though, I guess. It's Japan's strong adherence to the group which, I think, helps to make this country run so smoothly and makes it such a convenient place to live. I guess we'll just have to be patient when it comes to the removal of face masks here, if indeed that is something that we want to see happen in the not too distant future. Yes, apparently people in Japan are having trouble sitting properly on trains. Or at least other passengers are troubled by the way some people are sitting on the trains. This perhaps then taps into the misconception that all Japanese people are well-mannered. Actually, I think they are for the most part, but it is true to say that on the nation's commuter trains, this perception can be put to the test. As of December 2021, the inconsiderate way some passengers sit on trains is the second most annoying aspect of using trains and train stations for Japan's travellers, behind being noisy and frolicking around, according to an annual survey. The Japan Association of Private Railway Companies has been carrying out their train and station nuisance ranking for over 20 years now. The latest survey received responses from over 2,000 people. The way people take their seat has ranked in the top 3 nuisances for the past 4 years, making it the most consistent annoyance for commuters over that period. More specifically, it's the way some passengers take up too much seating space though, through placement of luggage, manspreading, etc., among others, that is the main bugbear, accounting for over 50% of votes. This is followed by stretching out legs or crossing legs, not giving up seats to the elderly and pregnant and others who are in need, kids standing on seats with shoes on, and having the next passenger fall asleep on your shoulder. Let's take a look then at the nuisance ranking for 2021. Noise and frolicking around came in at top with 39.1% of the votes. The way people take their seat was second with 37.4% of the votes. The way people board or alight trains comes in at third with 29.8%. Then we've got coughing or sneezing without consideration for the surroundings, use of smartphones, placement or the way of people holding their luggage, garbage left unattended, being drunk, noise from headphones, eating and drinking in crowded carriages, applying makeup, sitting on the floor of the carriage, don't see that too often, ignoring priority seating, how people use escalators and elevators in the train stations themselves, using portable devices like laptops and games, or at least the way people use these things, others, pets on trains, and then finally nothing in particular. What's surprising with all of this is that despite all the appeals from transport authorities and organisations for commuters and passengers to get their act into gear with regards to manners, and this includes through posters and campaigns, which usually includes posters related to this very survey put up inside trains in a kind of attempt to name and shame, it seems that some people still just don't care. What's even more surprising to me is that my number one annoyance, the thing that really flicks my switch when it comes to the manners of other passengers on trains, isn't even inside this top 20 ranking, unless it is I've somehow misunderstood the Japanese. And that is people who rush, I mean really rush, from the other side of the carriage to snatch the seat that rightfully belongs to another passenger. This really, really annoys me. Sometimes I'm left wondering why people in Japan aren't more vocal about calling out other people, other passengers in this case, about their bad manners. It's something that I'd like to see them do, but it's also something that I don't have the confidence to do myself. I think because I'm a foreigner living in Japan and somehow it isn't my place to do that. Is that weird? I don't know. I did try it one time though. It was on the train back home from a night out, not a big night out, but I'd had a couple of drinks. I was already sat on the train, and at one particular stop, a lady was coming in to take the seat next to me. I mean, she was literally sort of reversing round and about to sort of park her bum on the seat next to me when this middle-aged dude just rushed in and literally sort of squoze in right underneath her and took her seat from her. And this really, really annoyed me. So, I don't know, I guess I'd had a couple of drinks, I got the mask on, which gives you a bit of extra confidence and anonymity, I guess. So I just sort of turned over to him and said, what was that in English? And we just stared at each other for a few moments. The lady sort of stood in front of me, just holding onto the rail, and off we went. It was a pretty crowded train, so I had got this annoying guy next to me and some people on this side of me as well. So there's nowhere to move. And with the sort of motion of the train, I occasionally sort of brushed in, bumped into the people either side of me. And as this was happening, I noticed that this particular guy was kind of getting frustrated with me. So I kind of squoze in a little bit and sort of read my book and sort of skulked along like this, kind of wishing that I hadn't said anything to him in the first place. But anyway, a couple of more contacts later, and he eventually just sort of turned around to me and said, "Don't touch me," like this, in English. He's a Japanese guy. And I just kind of just went like this and kind of ignored him. And he, "Don't touch me," again, like this. And I was, oh God, I wish I hadn't done this now. He even got to the point where he took out my earphones and said, "Don't touch me. I know you're doing it on purpose." He said that bit in Japanese. And I made an appeal that there was nowhere for me to move and that I couldn't do anything. And at this point, the lady who'd been stood in front of me sort of skulked off to another side of the train along with a couple of other people. I think they were worried about the situation escalating. I was feeling like a right plonker at this point and, honestly wished that I hadn't said anything. Eventually this guy's stop came and he sort of stormed off the train and barged through a bunch of people as he did so. So he was clearly a little bit sort of, I don't know, having a bad day or maybe unhinged a little bit, I don't know. And I could hear the couple of lads next to me sort of talking amongst themselves about what had gone on. And I turned around to them saying, "Oh yeah, he was quite angry, wasn't he?" And they said, "Oh yeah, don't worry about it, just ignore it." And that was the end of it. But I tried to call this guy out on his bad manners, and ultimately I just felt worse for having done so. But again, is it wrong that I felt this way? Perhaps I was right to have called him out on his bad manners. I don't know. I've been in a similar situation whilst driving here in Japan as well. I think the thing that really, everybody when they're driving tends to be a little bit tense. And what really gets me when I'm driving is when people in the car behind me come up right up my rear end. And this, I can't stand this. It just really annoys me so much. And I was on a highway actually one day on like a Sunday afternoon or a weekend afternoon driving home. And this guy I was in the fast lane. And it was just a 2-lane highway. I was in the fast lane. I was trying to get over into the slow lane, but it was kind of full. I couldn't get over. So I'm kind of stuck in this fast lane. And I've got this guy who's right up my backside. He is right up my backside. And I'm just getting more and more infuriated with them. Eventually, I managed to get into the slow lane. And as they came past me, I sort of stuck my finger up at them, just held it there by the window like this as they went past. And they pulled straight in front of me. And I was like, what on earth are they doing? They've been right on my backside all this time and now they're just going to pull straight up in front of me. And it didn't sort of occur to me what was going on at the time. So I just kind of carried on driving behind them, getting all sort of fussed and like furious with them. And eventually I managed to get back into the fast lane and overtake them. And so when I pulled back in front of them, they overtook me again and pulled back right in front of me. And I realised what they were doing. And they were, for about 2 or 3 kilometres, I would say, they kept slowing down, speeding up, slowing down, and kind of upsetting my rhythm, kind of dangerous driving, essentially. And I knew that there was this regular service stop coming up that I always kind of go into and take a break at. And I was thinking, oh God, what should I do? What if they sort of follow me into this service stop, because at this point they've come back behind me now. And I went through all these scenarios in my head about how, they'd follow me into the service stop and I'd sort of get out and like front up to them and really show them what for. But really I was just like panicking. And this service station started approaching. I put my winker on, they put their winker on, and just as I pulled in, they just carried straight on. And thankfully that was the last I saw of them. And after that incident, I vowed, despite the fact that I do think people need to be told, I did vow to just sort of shut up and keep my hands on the wheel and not make any gestures, even if there are other drivers out there that annoy me and that I know to be doing something wrong. But this, I think, does highlight a point about Japan and maybe other countries too. It seems to be harder for people to kind of publicly police manners, to call people out on their bad manners, for fear of escalating the situation and the consequences turning out to be even more severe. In the case of driving, it seems that an increasing number of motorists in Japan are letting dash cams and smartphone footage do the talking for them. Back to the trains though, and the release of the nuisance ranking in 2021, the latest ranking, came around the same time that the Japanese government announced that it would oblige railway operators to install security cameras in newly built trains. This came on the back of a knife attack on a Tokyo train in October in 2021, when a man dressed as Batman villain the Joker attacked passengers on the train, injuring 17 people. Now, back to the latest nuisance ranking, and according to the results, 33.9% of respondents did feel that people's behaviour had improved at least somewhat from the previous year. Interestingly, the 2021 survey asked respondents for their concerns about using trains during the pandemic, and by far the main concern was aimed at those passengers who were not wearing their face masks on the train, which accounted for over 70% of the votes, again according to survey results. Let's see what surprises then, if any, the results of the 2022 survey bring. The survey is available online in Japanese right now. The levels of plastic packaging used to wrap many of Japan's snack products is staggering, still in 2022. I love a good biscuit, but in Japan I'm often put off buying them, in no small part because they often come individually wrapped or in pairs in plastic wrapping, then placed in a plastic tray, which is then in turn wrapped in another layer of plastic or put inside a cardboard box. And then I'm the one left to deal with the waste plastic packaging, which usually means stuffing it into another plastic bag, which I'm ordered to buy from the city, otherwise they won't take away my garbage. In fact, the extent to which Japan wraps its food in plastic, suffocates it in cellophane, or serves it up on a plastic tray is almost psychotic. Take a look around but one supermarket in Japan to find a single plastic-wrapped carrot, a party-sized bag of individually wrapped senbei rice crackers, or a couple of peanuts in a plastic wrapping that should accommodate far more. I sometimes wonder how many of Japan's snack wrappers have ended up on that great floating garbage patch out in the Pacific that is thought to have a surface area around 3 times the size of France. I don't know though, some of the data out there regarding Japan's use of single-use plastics is mixed. According to the UN's Single-Use Plastics, a Roadmap for Sustainability publication, plastic packaging accounts for about half of the plastic waste in the world. Most of this waste is generated in Asia, while America, Japan and the European Union are the world's largest producers of plastic packaging waste per capita. It continues. The most common single-use plastics found in the environment are, in order of magnitude, cigarette butts, plastic drinking bottles, plastic bottle caps, food wrappers, plastic grocery bags, plastic lids, straws and stirrers, other types of plastic bags, and foam takeaway containers. According to the same report, in 2015, Japan was behind only the US as the second largest producer or generator of plastic waste per capita in the world. Some sources also have Japan as among the top 10 ocean polluters in terms of plastic waste. Today, according to reports, Japan remains one of the world's largest generators of single-use plastic waste, with around 9.4 million tons generated domestically each year. Japan, though, is among the 175 nations to have endorsed a resolution at the UN Environment Assembly in March this year to end plastic pollution and forge an internationally legally binding agreement by the end of 2024. Let's see what that agreement eventually looks like then. Also, as part of Japan's actions for marine plastic litter, the Ministry of Environment has launched a Plastic Smart initiative to encourage the use of plastic in a wise manner. I don't know though, looking along the snack shelves at my local supermarket, and it's hard to see much of anything wise going on. I wonder if one contributing factor to the mad levels of snack wrapping going on in Japan is down to the culture of sharing them among friends and colleagues as omiyage or souvenirs. No one wants to turn up their desk at work of a morning to find it covered in crumbs and chocolate smears, I suppose. Some people in Japan have told me that the extensive snack wrapping came on the back of the actions of a criminal gang dubbed the Monster with 21 Faces, who went around threatening to poison products of some of Japan's largest snack manufacturers in the 1980s. I'll leave you to look that one up for yourselves. Other dishonourable mentions on this list of silly mysteries in Japan in 2022 might have included the continually high cost of fruit over here. I've long since given up any hope of Japan adopting a more reasonable attitude towards the price of fruit though. And news reports about someone being foolish enough to spend millions of yen on a couple of melons or a bunch of grapes no longer surprise me. In another mention, I've not really been doing much online form filling this year, but with a surname that's made up of 12 letters and which, of course, can't be written in kanji, I'm bracing myself for the unpleasant surprise of one of this country's many outdated online application forms not being able to accommodate my name. So guys, it's over to you. I hope this list has served as something of an eye-opener for you and something for you to contemplate. If there's aspects of life as a foreigner in Japan that continue to puzzle and perplex in 2022, drop them in the comments below. And as always, if you've liked this video, click on that thumbs up button and don't forget to subscribe to the City Cost Japan YouTube channel. It really means a lot to us. See you next time. Bye bye.